You're listening to Worldview from Chicago Public Radio. I'm Jerome McDonnell. It's Thursday and time again for our Global Activism series. Each Thursday on Worldview, we hear about a person who's decided to work to make the world a better place. And today we'll hear about an effort that encourages U.S. students to help students in other countries get a better education. Building with Books works with young people in the U.S. to build schools in developing countries through a sister schoolhouse program. So far, Building with Books has constructed more than 140 schools in 9 countries. Jim Ziolkowski is the founder and president of Building with Books, and he told me how Building with Books got started.
Building with Books got started, I guess, on a conceptual level back in 1989. I had finished college and worked a couple of jobs framing houses and waiting tables and saved some money and traveled around the world for about a year. And I spent most of my time in developing countries. And specifically in Nepal, I was up in the mountains and 6 or 7 days into a long trek up and went through a village where they were celebrating the opening of a school. And I was just passing through on the second day of this celebration. It had been going on for over 25 hours straight. People were just unbelievably excited about this simple little schoolhouse that they had just built. And I had continued on from there up into the mountains further and came back and took a job with GE in finance. And then after about a year and a half or so, I left GE to start up Building with Books with my brother Dave. And we worked on the East Coast initially because that's where my job was, in getting the funding together and establishing our mission. And
all right, wait a minute. You left a job in finance to do a school like you saw in Nepal.
Correct. Well, I left I left the job in finance to go and build 3 schools. My brother and I had this idea that we'd build one in Brazil, one in Malawi, in southern Africa, and one in Nepal. The idea came from Nepal, and then more and more young people started to get excited about it, so we developed a program that would engage American high school students and get them involved in what we're doing as well on a global scale, and we have now very strong after-school programs across the country.
All right, so you went and built, and you ended up building these 3 schools then, these first 3 schools, Brazil, Malawi, and Nepal.
Correct.
And how did that go? Was this all you'd anticipated?
Oh, it was more than any of us anticipated, for sure. And when you're younger, sometimes you don't consider all the different risks and all the different possibilities. And shortly after leaving GE, I felt a pretty high level of responsibility. We had committed to building those schools. We had formed collaborations with Save the Children and Habitat for Humanity International to identify those places. And 3 to 5 months after I left GE, we weren't able to raise the funds. Nobody would believe that we could, build these schools in these remote regions of these countries. So we couldn't get the support, the financial support to do it. And it was very difficult to consider the possibility of not being able to succeed because so many people were depending on us at that point. And, it's kind of a longer story how we were able to pull it off in those early days, but we ultimately did build those first 3 schools, and now we've built 149 worldwide, and 65,000 kids have attended our schools, and adults, actually. And so we're very fortunate to have had a phenomenal team of people that have come together behind this, and really been blessed in a lot of ways.
Now, one of the things about building schoolhouses, I guess it sounds like a great idea, but people always say, well, I could build a hospital, but I don't have the doctors to put in it. I could build a schoolhouse, but I don't have teachers to put in it. What do you do? How do you get teachers in the buildings that you build?
Well, our methodology is very simple, and part of it includes working in villages where they either have teachers or where the local ministries of education will provide teachers. And when we build a school, we have a couple of large-scale meetings in any given village where we'll build, and the entire village comes out and participates in the meeting. They understand what our expectations are, and we understand what theirs are. And then we all sign a covenant agreeing to it before we go forward and break ground. And the Ministry of Education in any country or any region where we build schools is also required to sign a commitment saying that they will provide the teachers. The villagers provide all the unskilled labor from the ground up. We'll provide the skilled labor, we'll provide construction supervisors, and all the technical aspects, and we'll bring in the materials like the trusses, the rebar, the cement, that sort of thing, things that the villagers couldn't do. But the villagers contribute local materials, sand, aggregate for the concrete, and they also contribute a lot of labor. 30 volunteers per day, 6 days a week for 2.5 months. They set their timetables, they set their schedules, and they, in almost every case, exceed what our expectations are.
Can you give
Tens
us
of thousands of volunteer work days every year go into building these schools.
Can you give us an example of a village where this has worked out particularly well?
Well, it's really worked out well in all the villages where we've built schools around the world. We're focused primarily. Well, we're building schools now in India and in Nepal and in Malawi and Southern Africa and in Mali and in Nicaragua. In all these areas, that methodology and bringing the teachers in and engaging and mobilizing the communities to build has worked out extremely well. And I think it's worked out well because it's very simple, and it also empowers the locals. They build these schools, and they are able to make decisions in building these schools that are going to affect not only their children but generations to come. So it's pretty exciting on a local level, and there's some pretty neat things that happen as part of the construction. In addition to the teachers that are brought in to the new school, the people sign that covenant, which I mentioned. And in that covenant, we stipulate in bold print, not fine print, but bold print, that 50% of all the students have to be girls. And we found in the countries where we're working that the girls are heavily discriminated against in terms of education. And we also...
Is that a deal breaker anywhere?
It has not been. It came close a couple times up in the mountains in Nepal, but ultimately everybody's agreed to it, and we actually go out and do covenant compliance checks every 6 months, and we'll build in Mali, for instance, is where we're focusing most heavily right now is in West Africa for a lot of good reasons. But in Mali, we'll go every 6 months and check on the villages. We build schools that'll take kids from grade 1 through grade 6. And we'll build the first 3 classrooms. And once the villagers fill up those classrooms with 150 to 180 students, then we'll go back and build the second 3 classrooms. And before we build those second 3 classrooms, we check to see if girls are participating, if girls are getting access to class and education. And we also make sure that the ministry is anteed up and brought in the teachers that they've committed to. And if not, then we don't build. And we have had to postpone building a school in one village in Mali because they had about 46% girls and not 50% of the student body being girls. So we're going to give them another chance because they were close, but we don't compromise much on that. And we have leverage because we won't build the second part of the school unless the girls are attending over a 3-year period the first 3 classrooms.
Sounds like a good idea.